tree card here. So it is a faux stamping technique done with ink pads. Now you have to use dye-based ink pads for this. It will not work with other types of ink pads that are not dye-based. So I've got my bundle sage down. That was the first color that I put down. And then I just tapped the corners in different areas with my peeled paint. And now I am going to do my forest moss. And I'm going around the edges of the tree to give it some shading. And then I'm just tapping some of the areas. Just again, give it some shading, give it some dimension. And then I misted it twice. That was enough to get it completely covered. I want to hold my stamp firmly in place and then press around all the edges to make sure that I've got some good contact. And then I'm going to lift my stamp out there. So there we go. I'm going to let that aside to dry. And while that's drying, we are going to get these accessories ready. And what they actually are is brads. So I don't know about you, but I have an entire case full of brads that I don't use so often anymore. And this is a good way to use them. Now, having said that, it adds some extra dimension to your card. So if you're mailing your card out, you may just want to use some stickles. But for someone that you're giving the card to that you don't necessarily have to pay postage for, it's a great way to use up your brads. It adds some extra dimension to it, and it's a fun technique to do. I love doing this technique when I want to change the color of something. For instance, sometimes you have bought a set of brads that you wouldn't really work with. It's not colors that you normally work with, but it's a great way to use them up and not have them go to waste. So I've got a Versamark pad here, and I kind of have this pad dedicated to this particular technique because sometimes you get little bits of glitter and stuff like that in it. So I'm tapping my brad right into the ink, and then I'm going to tap it into the embossing powder, and then I'm going to use my heat gun to melt it. There we go. So this particular one coat was enough. We're going to do some of this red glitter ink for the round brads for the ornaments, and you'll notice that we end up needing 2 coats. One isn't quite enough to cover the brad completely, so once again we're going to press our brad into the ink and then into the glitter, heat it. And then while it's still hot, it's nice and sticky, so we just tap it back in there. And this particular powder, it's really easy to see when it's embossed because it goes a darker shade. The trickier ones are these tinier ones. And always make sure you turn it around so that you're heat embossing the opposite side too. There we go. All right, so have those on my mat to just cool down a bit. Because they're metal, they emboss super, super quickly, but that metal also gets hot quite quickly. So once you've got them embossed, if you wanted to, you could pierce your paper and pierce them right through, but what I like to do is I like to take the backs of the brads right off. And they're super easy to do. You just take, you can't do both sides at the same time, you have to do them one at a time and just wiggle it back and forth and get it off that way. Whoops. And then we're going to use our Distress Collage Medium to glue it in place. That one's off. Star seems to be the hardest one to do, but it will come off. Sometimes it takes some extra wiggles. right, so we're gonna let this completely dry and then we will assemble our card together.